I'm about to tell you a story of a case that is so tangled and so outrageous that few people would believe it if it weren't for the bodies. This is a story about suspicious deaths and outright murders, about millions of dollars of alleged fraud, about alleged corruption and cover-up. And it's also the story about a South Carolina family, a family of lawyers who were influential and powerful, and the incredible fall of their dynasty. I'm Harvard Lawyer Lee. This channel is all about where life meets law, so take a minute, please. Hit the like button for the video and also subscribe. I'd love to have you back because you're going to want to know more about the Murdaugh family murders. Today, Alex Murdaugh sits in jail accused of the murders of his wife Maggie and his younger son Paul. But we really can't start there. We have to start with who the Murdaugh family was and how they came to be such a dynasty. Randolph Murdaugh Sr. was an attorney who opened a practice in the low country of South Carolina. He became the solicitor in the area, which is a word commonly used for prosecutors. His son, Randolph Murdaugh Jr., also became a lawyer and also became the solicitor. In turn, his son, Randolph Murdaugh III, also became a lawyer and also became a solicitor. The Murdaugh family had an 86-year reign as prosecutors in that county, which made them incredibly powerful and influential in that area. When Randolph Murdaugh III had two sons, Randolph Murdaugh IV and Alex Murdaugh, everyone pretty much figured they'd become lawyers. But by then, South Carolina had passed a law so that lawyers could not simultaneously practice in a private firm and be prosecutors. So while they worked with the prosecutor's office, they were never actually solicitors themselves. Alex Murdaugh then had two children of his own. Buster, who tried to follow in the family's footsteps and went to law school, but who was kicked out at the end of his first year for plagiarism. He also had a younger son, Paul. Paul never made it as far as law school. Now, the first suspicious death came in 2015. The death at the time wasn't suspicious at all. A young man named Stephen Smith was found dead in the middle of a Hampton County road. While there were rumors that some of the police thought that the body looked staged and that Stephen Smith had been having a relationship with Alex Murdaugh's older son, Buster, the case was generally dismissed as simply a hit and run with no one charged for the crime. But the case has now been reopened. In 2018, Gloria Satterfield, who was the longtime housekeeper for the Murdaugh family, fell down the stairs at the Murdaugh house and died. Alex Murdaugh convinced Gloria Satterfield's two sons to sue him, to sue Alex, in order to collect the insurance proceeds. In fact, the Satterfield's attorney did collect $4.3 million, but now authorities have charged the attorney and Alex Murdaugh and a bank employee with criminal charges for theft of the funds that were supposed to go to the Satterfield boys. Law enforcement officials are now exhuming the body of Gloria Satterfield to look again to see whether her death was in fact an accident, as they had originally thought. The third death and the beginning of the fall of the Murdaugh dynasty was the death of 19-year-old Mallory Beach. She was in a boat being driven by Alex Murdaugh's younger son, Paul. Paul Murdaugh, according to witnesses, had been drinking and was drunk and insisted on piloting the boat anyway. He crashed into a pylon of a bridge, and 19-year-old Mallory Beach was killed in the accident. Her family sued the Murdaughs, claiming that Paul Murdaugh should never have been furnished alcohol and also that they had attempted to cover up. After the accident, police never took the blood alcohol of Paul Murdaugh, and according to some onlookers, Alex Murdaugh tried to coerce some of the witnesses who had seen the accident. Meanwhile, Maggie Murdaugh had separated from her husband Alex and was living at their beach house. Days before Paul's criminal trial was set to start, Alex Murdaugh asked Maggie Murdaugh to meet him, according to a text she sent a friend. Maggie and Alex were supposed to meet at the hunting lodge owned by the Murdaughs and say, 1,772-acre hunting lodge in South Carolina. Later that night, Alex called authorities to say that he had found the bodies of his wife Maggie and his younger son Paul outside the dog kennel. They had been shot with 2 different rifles. Under her will, apparently all of Maggie Murdaugh's property went to Alex Murdaugh after her death. Then, 3 months later, Alex Murdaugh claimed he also was shot in the head by a stranger while changing a tire on the side of the road. 10 days later, that story unraveled, and Alex Murdaugh then admitted that he had actually hired a former client to shoot him so that his son Buster could collect the $10 million life insurance proceeds for Alex's own life. Alex then said he had an opioid addiction, and then after a stint at an opioid recovery center, he was charged criminally with insurance fraud. He was later charged criminally for stealing from Gloria Satterfield. Alex Murdaugh also is charged with stealing funds from the family of Hakeem Pinckney. Hakeem Pinckney was a deaf man who became a quadriplegic through a car accident. Alex Murdaugh represented Pinckney in the lawsuit over his quadriplegia. But according to prosecutors, Murdaugh stole $309,000 that was earmarked for Pinckney's family. Prosecutors say he used that money to cover funds he had taken from other clients' accounts and for personal matters. Pinckney then died when his ventilator suddenly became unplugged while he was alone in a nursing home. Alex Murdaugh then collected another $89,000 but did not tell the family about that money. Prosecutors also have charged the CEO of Palmetto State Bank, who was the conservator of Pinckney's funds. The bank CEO was also the conservator for a case that Alex Murdaugh handled for 2 sisters whose mother and brother were killed. According to prosecutors, in that case, Alex Murdaugh took $990,000 and the bank employee took $355,000. And then finally, on July 14, 2022, he was also charged and indicted with the murders of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. This story is absolutely fascinating and horrifying all at the same time. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe because you're going to want to know more about what happens in the saga of the Murdaugh family murders.